Welcome into another episode of the Travis on Sports podcast. As always, I'm your host, Travis Tyler, here to talk about the latest news in the sports world. It's Tuesday, March 29th, 2022. Final Four has been set. There are some interesting college basketball players hitting transfer portal from teams whose seasons are over. We know who's going to be on Hard Knocks this summer in the NFL, also where the 2023 and 2024 NFL drafts will be held. Some rule changes also happening in the NFL. Star wide receiver getting traded out of nowhere seemingly. An update on Fox's broadcast teams for the NFL season. An MLB legend returns to where his career began and announces it will be his final season. Some other MLB signings. A contract extension for a college football coach. Another NBA injury, and we'll update on the playoff picture, and we'll also update on the NHL's playoff picture. But we begin in college basketball with the NCAA tournament. The 2022 Final Four is now set, and we know who will be playing in New Orleans this Saturday night. 2-seed Villanova escaped 5-seed Houston by 6 points on Saturday to win the South region. Didn't come without a price, however. Villanova guard Justin Moore reportedly tore his Achilles in the game and will obviously miss the Final Four game. He is the team's second leading scorer at 14.8 points per game. This is Villanova's 7th Final Four appearance. The Wildcats will be playing Kansas out of the Midwest region. The Jayhawks are the only number 1 seed to make it to the Final Four this season. Had a pretty easy time with a 10-seed Miami in the Elite Eight. It was a competitive first half, and actually Miami led at the half, but Kansas ran away with everything in the second half and held the Hurricanes to just 15 second half points while scoring 47 points themselves. I think Villanova is a pretty difficult matchup for Kansas. I probably wouldn't have said that at the beginning of this tournament, but the way Villanova has played in this tournament shows it's been peaking at the right time. It's a huge loss having Moore not able to play, but it also gives Villanova someone to rally around and kind of a chip on the shoulders, if you will, to prove themselves. For Kansas, Remy Martin, the point guard transfer from Arizona State, has been very good defensively this year and will challenge Villanova point guard Colin Gillespie because he's a little quicker, to me a little more athletic, but it should be a good matchup. And I think the most important player for Villanova is forward Jalen Samuels now that Moore is out of the game. The most important thing for Kansas will be their consistency. There are times this year where the Jayhawks looked like the best team in the country and other times where they look extremely beatable, particularly in conference play, and even more particularly when David McCormick struggles underneath or Ochai Agbaji is not hitting shots at his normal pace. And that's going to be something, Villanova's not that deep of a team. Kansas definitely runs a little deeper, but if those two guys aren't really clicking, that could be something that Villanova takes advantage of and could lead to Villanova playing for the title on Monday night. Duke, continuing the Coach K farewell tour, used a big first half to hold off Arkansas and win the West region. Arkansas, to their credit, especially in the second half, great effort, but ultimately didn't have the execution, didn't hit the shots exactly to get it done right when Arkansas would go on a little bit of run and cut into that deficit. Duke's defense would show up with a critical turnover, one of the point guards getting a steal in the lane, and suddenly you'd look and what had been a 4 or 5 point game is now back up to 11, 12 points. And so that's really what did Arkansas in. Pretty fitting that Coach K reaches the Final Four in his last tournament, and also fitting that the Blue Devils will be facing arch rival North Carolina, who won the East region over Cinderella 15 seed St. Peter's. Strangely enough, the first time that Duke and North Carolina will take their rivalry to the NCAA tournament. Both teams obviously historic blue blood programs. In the Elite Eight, the Tar Heels were simply too athletic for St. Peter's and played outstanding defense, didn't allow many open shots the entire game, and it's fitting that arch rival has a chance to end Coach K's career. Regardless, it's going to end this weekend, whether it ends on Saturday or in the championship game on Monday. But you may also recall that the Tar Heels earlier this month ruined Coach K's final home game by blowing out the Blue Devils at home in Cameron Indoor. First-year head coach Hubert Davis for North Carolina has definitely faced struggles this year. They've definitely had a talented team. Believe they were preseason top 10. Started off strong and faded, and now they're coming back strong. They're finally playing at the potential that a lot of people saw in there. A lot of that has been due to forward Brady Manick having some sensational games during this tournament run he had 19 points, I think, total on Sunday. And before that, in the game where they knocked out Baylor, he had 26 before being disqualified due to a flagrant 2 foul in the middle of the second half. So he's had a lot of games where he's just making every shot that he could possibly get. And I think, obviously, because of that, Duke's going to have to concentrate on him, but there are other guys on that team that can make shots if you concentrate too much on him. Should be a competitive game, and again, I'm going to bring this up. I brought it up about Villanova, I brought it up about North Carolina last week. North Carolina doesn't use many bench players. They had one person off their bench play more than 1 minute in the game on Sunday, so that could become a factor against another deeper, just as athletic Duke team. So now that the college basketball season is over for most teams, other than those 4 that we just talked about, there are many intriguing players who have already entered the transfer portal, and I'm sure we'll see a lot more, especially coming from LSU with that coaching change, anywhere else with coaching changes. You can see more complete lists and updated lists on Rivals, 24/7, On3, whatever other similar sites are out there. But here are a couple guys that caught my eye so far. Jalen Bridges, a forward from West Virginia, plays more of the 3 spot. Okay, 3-point shooter, really athletic guy, pretty good defender. Only averaged like 8 points a game last year, but he was also not asked to contribute in such a significant role. And he's only coming off his sophomore year, so he's got eligibility left. And he's set to visit Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan State, and Baylor so far. Another guy, I'm going to butcher this pronunciation probably, Utah Valley center Fardaws Aimaq, 6'11", 245, back-to-back WAC Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year in the WAC. Instant upgrade for teams that need a big man. Last year, again, he's 6'11", 245, and last year averaged 18.9 points per game and 13 rebounds. Another big guy, KJ Williams from Murray State, 6'10", 245. Another guy that teams that miss on Aimaq could turn to. He's averaged double digits 3 times in his career, averaged 18 points per game last year with 8.5 rebounds. 6'10", 245 guy that can spread the ball out and shoot the ball and is very athletic frame. Terence Shannon, guard or forward, plays the 2 and 3 positions from Texas Tech. One of the top wings. He's heard from at least 7 teams already: Michigan State, Illinois, Kentucky, UConn, Michigan, Missouri, North Carolina. He can jump out of the gym, averages 10 points per game, averaged double digits both of the last 2 years. Fits that athletic toughness, good defender kind of style that those teams like in his wings. Obviously, Michigan State, Illinois, Michigan, Missouri, with him being from Chicago, make a ton of sense for destinations. And obviously, Kentucky, UConn, and North Carolina are in on similar players year after year. LSU center Sharif O'Neal. The only reason I put him on this, he hasn't had a very successful career. It's Shaq's son leaving his dad's alma mater. There's a lot to live up to being Shaq's son. I'm not going to hold that against him. He hasn't lived up to the hype that he had when he was committing to schools. This is now the second time he's transferring. He can definitely play a role or even be a starter on a team. It's just, I don't think he's starting center for a blue blood program. He's going to be one of those, not necessarily a smaller school, but a team that doesn't have the rich history of the postseason success, I would think. Indiana guard Rob Finney, not a huge scorer, but a solid bench player. Could improve as a shooter. From what I remember watching him, he has an okay shot and just doesn't take enough of them. Really good defensive point guard. He just needs to be able to show more scoring ability and hit his full potential. Xavier Pinson, the guard from LSU, again, I expect a lot of LSU guys to move on with Will Wade being let go as the head coach out there. This is also Pinson's second time transferring. He transferred to LSU from Missouri last offseason. Definitely a starter caliber player. I don't think he did as much at LSU as he had at Missouri, but he can definitely be a starting point guard wherever he goes. Also, Jalen Graham, a center from Arizona State, 6'9", 220, averaged 9.9 points per game. He was only a 3-star recruit coming out, but you look at that size and his athletic potential is much higher, and he's always been a better defender in his game. So if he can end up somewhere that can help develop his offense, that his potential could skyrocket there. In more serious college basketball news, Memphis basketball has found itself in some hot water. The program is now facing major Level 1 and Level 2 charges stemming from an NCAA investigation that found violations of NCAA clauses related to the lack of institutional control, head coach responsibility, and failure to monitor. Basically means stuff was going on under Penny Hardaway's control. He may have known about it, he may not have known about it. It seems pretty likely that he would have known about it. This investigation was launched largely due to a situation with James Wiseman, who only ended up playing 3 games for Memphis due to eligibility concerns in 2019 and ended up being the number 2 overall pick to the Warriors that following draft. It was made clear there were other players involved in that. It's not just a Wiseman thing, so don't go solely blaming him. I mean, most of the time these things happen, it's not necessarily the kid's fault anyway. But the violations in the investigation specifically named head coach Penny Hardaway as failing to demonstrate an atmosphere of compliance. There are also apparently, from the article that I read, unspecified violations for the school's football program as well. To the NFL, a couple big league announcements this week. The league has announced that the annual HBO training camp series Hard Knocks will feature the Detroit Lions and premiere on August 9th. This is the first time the Lions will be featured on the program, and honestly, I'm pretty excited about it just because, we're going to get a lot more Dan Campbell. A lot of people think about him as the biting kneecaps guy, but listen to his press conferences and his pep talks and whatever. Him and his staff are going to give you sound bites, and honestly, you can see the culture, or at least attempt to be changing through how they act and everything, how they act around each other, how they're interacting with everybody, what they say, all that stuff. And there are several personalities on that team that should contribute for further entertainment. So while a lot of teams dislike being featured on the show, I think it's good for the Lions to show the country more of a team that really most casual fans know very little about, other than they usually suck. It's a good way to show what may be an emerging team in the upcoming seasons. The league has also announced more NFL draft locations. It was previously announced that the 2023 was going to be in Kansas City, and now we know that the 2024 draft is being awarded to Detroit. Team president Rod Wood said that the main event will take place in the Campus Martius area, and nearby stadiums like Little Caesars and Ford Field would have complimentary stuff. Like if you've been to the draft before, there's usually, especially in recent years, there's usually like games and combine activities and opening musical acts and concerts and stuff. So should be good for that city. Speaking of Kansas City, the Chiefs made a huge move by trading All-Pro wide receiver Tyreke Hill to the Dolphins late last week. The Chiefs will receive 5 draft picks, including a 2022 first-round pick in the deal, and Hill later signed a 4-year, $140 million extension with Miami after the trade was completed. Kansas City's receivers now are Juju Smith-Schuster, who was just signed, Mecole Hardman, Josh Gordon are the top 3. Haven't looked further on the depth chart on that. I would expect Hardman to take over the Hill role more, and I would also expect the Chiefs to target at least one wide receiver somewhere in the draft. It's a pretty deep draft class. There are also other rule changes being made in the NFL. First, they've tweaked the Rooney Rule, which was in place to promote minority and diverse hires. Obviously, with the Brian Flores lawsuit and everything, the lack of support and accountability in that realm has been amplified in the public light, and so the league has tweaked the rule. Now each team will hire a minority offensive assistant in 2022, and the assistant can be female or member of an ethnic and racial minority. That person will work closely with the staff and the head coach to increase minority candidate participation and further develop much-needed, highly sought-after minority candidates. The league also officially amended the language in the rule to include women as a minority when it had previously just referred to ethnicity and race. They also added a mission statement and announced a diversity advisory committee of 6 members, one of which I believe I read was former Texans GM Rick Smith. The second rule change is that I believe it was a proposal by the Indianapolis Colts to amend overtime rules, and that has been approved by the owners. Now, in the playoffs only, each team